Yeah.
Okay, so I'll pass over the time now to Mr. Vivek to share with you guys on API reliability. Okay, Mr. Vivek, please.
Yeah. Hello guys, good afternoon. So I don't know like how visible it is, but I promise next slide should be much more visible, but it's good, it's looking good on TV anyway. So how many of you do regular coding on daily basis? On daily basis, or maybe mostly in a week, okay? And how many of you after writing your code also do write unit test? Okay, hands have gone little down, but okay. So, okay, we will tackle this problem. So, today my topic is property based testing using schemathesis. Has anyone heard about schemathesis before? No, okay. Okay, so my name is Vivek. I have come here from India, Hyderabad. I work for a company called EPAM Systems. I work there as a software architect. I have been in Python world for more than 12 years now, and I am a backend developer mostly. Sometimes I also do some open source contribution, like I go to some GitHub resources and find issues, and if I could fix it, I can just raise the PR. Okay, so what is the property of anything in general? Let's say this is some object. I don't know what it is. Clicker, right? What is the property of this clicker? Any object, take any object of your choice. What is the property? Okay, yeah.
Color.
I would say those are more maybe attributes. Yeah. So property is there is a laser pointer here, right? Okay. No, I don't want it. Okay. So the property is, suppose whenever I press the button, the laser should come out, and whether I put that laser on the screen, on the chair, on any person, it won't impact the property of this clicker, right? I can show the laser anywhere I want. That's the property of this laser pointer. Similarly, in our program also we have certain properties of our code, and if we test that, almost half the battle of unit testing is already won. Let's see how that works. So property is basically a general behavior. What you were telling was also right, but that was attribute. I'm talking about behavior of the code, not the attribute. Okay. So the behavior should always be true irrespective of, in regardless of any specific input, like this laser pointer, whether I point it on screen, on you, on chair, anywhere, it should point. For example, like another example I have here is a teacup. So a cup, what is the property of a cup? I can put any item in that. I can put water, I can put, tea, coffee, lemon tea, I can put this flower petals. Cup won't say no to me. So I can put anything, whatever I want. That's the property of that cup. Okay, now let's see in terms of code how it looks. So very simple code, add x comma y, return x plus y. What's the property in this? Can anyone guess?
If there are two integers, the output should be an integer.
Correct. So let's say 3 plus 2 is equal to 5. 2 plus 3 is also equal to 5. So the property could be x plus y should be equal to y plus x. Correct? But will it hold true for a string? If both x and y are a string, x plus y will not be equal to y plus x. So in this case, this is the property. The property is x plus y is equal to y plus x only if it is the integer, only if it is a float. X plus y is not equal to y plus x if it is anything else other than integer or float. If it is a list, if it's a string, the result will be different. That's the property. Okay. Now let's see like how this property based testing, or how we can do it and how it is different or related to unit testing. We'll also dive into some code. Let's see. So unit test, like we just discussed, we have to write manually. Nowadays, of course, we have AI assistant which generates most of the code, but still we have to write the unit test manually, and we have to maybe we have to use maybe PyTest, unit test. We have to do some mocking and all that. Unit test, when we write, we are limited to certain cases, certain explicit cases that we can think of. PyTest, the property-based testing, it covers more broader scenarios. Unit testing, it might miss some edge cases because we are doing it. As a human, we can make errors. Property-based testing, of course, I'm not saying it is 100% foolproof, but because the cases are system generated, so it covers more broader scenarios and we uncover bugs. Okay, so yeah, I would say like property-based testing is more suitable for more complex systems. So does it mean that we should only do property-based testing and not do unit testing, or we should only do unit testing and not do property testing, or shall we do like both? Anything? What do you guys think? Only unit test? Depends on what?
The complexity of your function.
Okay. So yeah, they are both complementary to each other. It does not mean that if you are doing property testing, you should not do any unit testing at all, because none of them can cover all the 100% scenarios. But if you can have a mix and match of both, then definitely you can cover almost like 99% of cases. Okay, so let's see like how they look different in terms of code. So earlier we saw add method, right? X, y returns x plus y. Here are some unit tests for that add method. So we can see like 2, 3 is equal to 5, 0, 0 is 0, minus 1 is minus 2. That's all. So these are my unit tests. Now let's see how it will look in case of property-based testing. So there is a library called as Hypothesis, and Schemathesis is built on top of Hypothesis. Okay, just like we have Fast API which is built on top of Starlet, something similar. So what I'm doing here is I am giving that, I'm kind of parameterizing it. I'm saying, okay, in this add method, give integers, and then Hypothesis, what it will do is it will randomly generate lot of data values, lot of test values, maybe infinity, maybe long integers, maybe small integers, maybe 0 and all that, and it will test it. So here I am saying st.integers is equal to st is for strategies here. Okay, so it will pass different integers, and it will then check the behavior that we were talking earlier. A comma b, a plus b should be equal to b plus a, and this will only hold true only for integers or floats. So if we pass strings, of course it will fail. So this is a property that we are testing, and instead of 3 unit test cases that I was having, that I have written manually, this Hypothesis will generate like hundreds of such scenarios and automatically test it. Okay, are you guys following me? Good so far? Okay. Okay. Before I go ahead, how many of you actually work on developing backend APIs, any framework? Okay, I see few hands, or maybe not in Python, in any language, doesn't matter. It could be Java, Node.js, anything. Okay. So those who are API developers, or even those who are not, those who use application, I'm sure all of us, we use a lot of web applications. So we might have definitely seen such images or such pages, right? Does this look familiar?
Yes.
Every one of us has seen these things, even if you are not a developer. And imagine doing this on a Friday evening, weekend, without testing and pushing to production, and then go home, sleep well. Okay. So these are the things that we want to avoid, and this can be easily avoided if we actually do proper testing. Now, to do proper testing, we have to go a lot of scenarios, of course, do proper unit testing, proper functional testing, regression testing, and everything. Or the easy way to go around this is at least do property-based testing. Okay, so earlier I told about Hypothesis. So Hypothesis is more a generic framework which you can use for any Python code that you write. Schemathesis is specifically for API testing, and my topic was like boosting API reliability. So that's why I'll talk more about Schemathesis now, because we want to make our APIs more reliable. We want to, reduce bugs in our code and basically make our code work properly. So it's an open source. It does automatic testing, just like we discussed about hypothesis before. What it basically does is, so whether you write your application in Fast API, Flask, Django, Tornado, Starlet, Node.js, anywhere, you would at least generate Swagger documentation or OpenAPI spec. That's the standard, right? And Schemathesis works on OpenAPI spec because your OpenAPI spec contains all the properties of your API. What are the properties of an API? Any guesses? I'm talking about REST APIs, okay? It supports GraphQL also, but let's say only talk about, let's say, REST APIs. What are the properties of a REST API? Yeah, please. Sorry? Yes, it should be idempotent, yes. But with respect to, let's say, when I'm looking at a Swagger documentation, which is like my gateway to my API or the way my APIs are defined, with respect to that, what are my properties or what are the API properties? So let me give a hint. For example, say the method, whether it's a get method or a post method, patch, put, delete, options, like all those are methods. Maybe the URL, the path parameters, headers, query parameters, JSON body, all those are API properties. Okay, and because if we drill down, we will see that these path parameters, headers, all of these are also of certain type. Path parameter can be integer, can be UUID, can be say string, can be float. So these are the properties of my API that Schemathesis reads from OpenAPI specs and then automatically generates the test cases and tests it. Okay. So it looks for schema compliances, it looks for correct status codes, it looks for the errors that we get by putting wrong information. For example, let's say I have a query parameter, let's say string, which expects maybe 100 characters. Now what will happen if you pass 0 characters? What will happen if you pass 10,000 characters? Will the API work? How it will behave? So we're talking about behavior, right? You might have tested, you might not have tested, but this will definitely test it. Okay. So Schemathesis works on OpenAPI Swagger implementation or OpenAPI specs basically. Let's see. Shall we see the code in action? Yes, no? Yes. Okay. Okay, let me increase the font. So I have a sample Fast API app here. It has few APIs. Let me run this and show. Okay, it's already running. And here is the Swagger doc. Okay. Okay. So we can see like there are some very generic application, very generic APIs. We have some user APIs, some role APIs, login, get token and all that. Very, very common functionalities. Okay. Now if we see, let's say if I go to get by name. So here name is a path parameter. It's of string type. How it is getting all this information? Because Swagger, Fast API automatically generates the OpenAPI spec based on pydantic models, but there are other ways also in other frameworks to get this OpenAPI spec documentation. Now let's see how this works in case of in code basically. Let me increase the font. Okay, is this font good enough? Font size? Terminal here. Is it readable? Okay. So we have to install it. It's already installed, but like simply you can add it to your package manager like ppnv poetry, whatever you are using. The name is Schemathesis. So pip install Schemathesis. If you do, it will come. And so in two ways we can use Schemathesis. One is of course using code, and one is through CLI, command line interface, which Schemathesis provide. And to access command line interface, Schemathesis has two keywords. One is the full Schemathesis word, and the short for Schemathesis is ST. So we can use the commands with ST also. So let me show a command. I have copied few commands already so that I don't have to type it here. It will save some time. Okay. Okay. So what I am doing is my server is running on port 5010 here. Okay. And this is my OpenAPI spec JSON. If I try to click it, so this is the OpenAPI spec JSON that it generates. The Swagger that we were seeing earlier, it is based on this JSON file. And Schemathesis reads this JSON file to understand the properties of the APIs. Okay. Anyway, so here if I just do this st run, st for Schemathesis run, and the URL to my OpenAPI spec, and if I run it, so you see it has started testing it, and it has given me some errors already. And I can see the test cases that it has generated or it has tested, and all the errors I can see. So here the test case says undocumented HTTP status code. So basically in my API I have mentioned that this API would return either 200 or 422, but unexpectedly it is also returning 400, which was not documented. So either it is not documented, or I do not know that my API is actually returning 400. Could be either way. Okay. Let's go on. Here it is rejecting a positive data. So I have an API here. You see it also gives like this reproduce with curl command. So it is saying that ABC123 is the password like with which it is trying, and it is getting this error that it should be of at least 8 characters. So Schemathesis thing like it is a genuine positive case because it is expecting a string, it is passing a string, but the string length is lesser. That's why it is returning error. So it says like positive case is missing, returns error in positive case also. Here again it says undocumented HTTP code 409. Why 409? Because so again API is working fine. My API is actually not allowing any duplicate entry, but I did not document it in my API spec. So again it is saying like 409 is not documented, and so on. And what all it tests? So let's see. If I just say check all, checks all. So it actually tests a lot of things. Okay, I'll just show you what all it tests. So it tests for server errors, it tests for the schema violations, it tests for negative data, positive data, it tests for like suppose in some APIs we require headers. It can be auth header, it can be API key header, it can be any other header. Suppose if the header is not provided, still the API is proceeding ahead. That's also should not happen, right? So a missing header, positive data, undocumented HTTP status codes, all of these very common things. Trust me, if you can reduce these errors, your bugs are like already reduced to maybe 70-80% of the bugs are already gone. And then on top of that, if you do unit testing, your application reliability really increases a lot. Okay, so now we know that Schemathesis can do all of these things, and you see how many test cases it generated, 195. Now imagine writing 195 test cases on our own, or even using AI tool. You have to validate every case. You'll still have to go through the code and you have to check whether the assertion that you are making is correct or not. But here it is doing it all in just 2 seconds. It tested 200 test cases. I can also, there are options in CLI where I can give how many tests it should generate and all that. So all those flexibility we have, but this is like very, in short, you can see like how powerful it is. Okay, now let's move on. I'll show some filtering and all. So right now it is testing all the APIs. It might be possible that let's say I am making a change today, I am not touching all the APIs, I may be adding a new API or maybe adding a new module to it. So I don't want to test everything. Or let's say I only want to test get APIs, or I only want to test, let's say, put APIs. So I have options to, to do all those filtering and everything. Let's see. Okay. So here what I am doing is, let me copy and put here. So what I am doing here is I am saying exclude method post and include tag user APIs. So here in the Swagger, if you see, I have some tags here: user APIs, role APIs, auth APIs. These are the tags. So under user APIs, we have 3 APIs: 2 get, 1 post. When I am saying here include tag user API, so it means it will only test these 3 APIs, and on that I am saying exclude method post. It means it will only test these 2 get APIs of user tag or the user module. Okay, and that's all. So now whatever it is only doing the testing for those 2 get user APIs. Similarly, we have other options as well. One more option that I really like is this, which is I can put the output in a JSON file. Okay, let me put it in a XML file, because I think the Schemathesis recently got updated and this feature got deprecated. So let me add it to YAML file, XML file. Okay, so what I am doing is same commands, some exclude, some include, checks all, and then I am adding -- report, JUnit. So right now we have 3 formats in which it reports. Now here is an opportunity for all of you to do an open source contribution to the Schemathesis, which is to add a support for PyTest. Like automatically it should generate PyTest test cases instead of JUnit, or instead of other 2 reports format that it has. So if we generate this, of course it will do all the testing, and it generates this XML. And in this XML, it provides us all the information that it has performed on our code, which URL it hit, what was the property it tested, what was the parameter, was the result success, failure, everything. Now if we can parse this XML using any XML parser, we can generate our own test cases just using this XML, and we can write our test cases in PyTest format. So what I am trying to say here is, it generates a report. We have to do a little bit of coding to parse this XML and convert it into a PyTest based test cases, and that will be like our automated generation of the test cases. Okay, let's move on. So till here I have shown you what Schemathesis does, how to utilize it or how to use it through command line interface, and how to generate these reports. Also we can convert it into a PyTest based test cases. Now let's see how we can actually write the code. How to do the same thing using the code instead of CLI. So I have written here this test cases. So you see here what it is doing is, I am just importing the Schemathesis. Okay, and similarly, like in CLI also I was giving it the path to my OpenAPI JSON. Here also I am giving it the path to OpenAPI JSON. And here I am just saying, like, this method name of course can be anything. I am just saying schema.parameterize, call and validate, that's all. These 3 lines are equivalent to those 195 test cases. Okay, so if I run this, let me increase the font here. Okay, so if I run this, you can see all of those test cases that it ran using CLI. It also did the same thing using these 3 lines of code, and I have like all those bugs and errors that it was showing before. And of course now I have to go in my code and fix this and then run it again and do it till all the errors are gone. Okay, so I mean when I first saw this and when I first worked with it, I was so amazed that 3 lines of code can actually do this much. Okay, let's move on. I'll show the other things that we saw earlier, like how to exclude, include and all that. So similarly, like earlier we had just schema.parameterize. Now here we have schema.include, just like we had hyphen include tag in the CLI, similar to it, exclude and then parameterize. Those who have worked on PyTest, they already know parameterize anyway. But in case of PyTest parameterize, you pass the values on your own. Here it generates it automatically. Okay, so same 3 lines. It's just that I am doing some exclude and include, same operation that I was doing in CLI, so I can do here. Now, if you don't want to generate automatically, if you don't want to run CLI, you can write this type of code. Let's say for every module, I can write these 3 lines by including and excluding some tags, or maybe including or excluding some post or put calls, and I can write my test cases. So I would be writing maybe say 1 test case for each module, but that 1 test case for each module will be actually executing hundreds of test cases behind the scenes. Okay, here it's one example where we can also override the parameter if we want. So like I said, it generates lot of parameters automatically, but let's say if you want to still test with a certain parameter that you want, we can override and we can pass it. Okay. So that's how we can do it in code. And the one thing that I was telling earlier, that we can convert the XMLs into test cases. So this is the code that I wrote earlier to convert that XML file into PyTest based unit test cases. So each and every of that 195 test cases that we saw in the XML file, it got converted into this PyTest based format. Okay, and these are auto generated now. I did not write even a single line of this test code. Okay. So let me go back to slide. Where is my slide? Okay. So we saw that Schemathesis does this different 7-8 types of checks, not a server error, which is basically testing whether your API returns 500 or not. A status code conformance to check whether your API is actually returning all the expected status codes, or it is actually also returning some non-expected status codes. Content type conformance, or the other properties like what it is returning, it is actually matching with the response schema or not. Response schema conformance, response header conformance. It checks whether, like, if you don't pass the header, whether it is allowing or not. Negative data rejection and ignore dot. So all of these type of checks it does, which is basically covering a lot of things where we go wrong mostly. Okay, so in conclusion, we understood what is a property. Property of any code, whether it is a API or a normal add function, we now understand what it is. We saw the utility of property based testing, how it can help us in reducing our effort in implementing unit test. So hypothesis, if you want to use it for general cases, and schemathesis if you are testing any web application. We have seen examples. We have seen example of hypothesis. We have seen example of schemathesis. We have seen CLI. We have seen how schemathesis can be done using the code, and also I have offered you an opportunity to contribute to schemathesis and add a report for PyTest based thing also instead of JUnit. So that's all from my side. That was my topic. So yeah, any questions or any feedback, anything that you would want to discuss? Yeah.
So, how does schemathesis work with knowing, like,
Okay, it doesn't know that. So it is testing the API. So it might be possible that your database could be down. It might be possible, like you said, the database does not have the value. So it won't check the value, but what it will check is that in the post call it has inserted a certain value. So in the get call it will expect the same value. It could be any random value.
So it knows that both these calls are related in this way.
Yes. Other thing is it will like, so that's why I said it checks for multiple things. Then it will check for schema. Schema, so in, let's say in fast API, we already defined response schema. That's how the Checker API got generated, right? So in my response schema, I have mentioned that a name should be of string type. It should be of, let's say, 3 characters, maximum, let's say 100 characters. So it checks whether the output that is coming from, that API, is it actually matching that schema or not? So it will check the type, and that way it performs the testing. It doesn't know the actual value at all. It just matches.
So if you want to test the business logic as such, then we have to use PyTest or something.
Exactly. That's why I said it is complementary. It is not a replacing of unit testing, but it helps you in closing all the pitfalls or common pitfalls that every developer falls into. Yes, please. You are raising hand, right?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So I want to ask about happy path and unhappy path testing. This is related to mutation testing. So does hypothesis or
Schemathesis.
schemathesis only do the happy path? So some context.
No, it does not do happy path. It also does a lot of negative testing. Okay, and by negative testing I mean let's say string only. So I am saying my name should be of 3 characters to 100 characters. So it will not just test 3 to 100 characters. It will also test with no characters. It will test with none. It will test with, let's say, 1000 characters. It will test with special characters. It will test with, let's say, some let's say some UTC, let's say some Chinese characters, some Japanese characters, and all that. And it will see whether it is actually going through or not. So it does a lot of negative testing. I would say more negative testing than positive testing. Did I answer your question?
Is there some concept like expected fail here?
Sorry?
If you give bad input, you are expect the test to fail because if it passes, then it's a weak test suite. So does it have this kind of features?
So it depends on your behavior of the API. Whether your API is actually, so see, it is just a behavior testing, right? If you have defined that your API should not accept any special character, if you have defined that your API should not accept, let's say, space character, just space, let's say 100 spaces. Okay, so what it should do, your API should maybe return 400 bad requests, but in that case it is not returning, so it will raise a flag that I have passed space of 100 characters, but still your API did not raise 400, so that's an error, or that's a bug.
Exactly right.
Yeah, so that's what it will report. Please play with it. In my experience so far, it has actually caught all of these things that you were talking about.
Okay, if there's no more question, thank you, Mr. Vivek.
No